Yo, yo, yo. Here we are on the Weird Music Podcast with a very special episode. Today we have Dave DiCianni on the podcast. Dave here is the manager for Goose, Kitchen Dwellers, Pigeons Playing Ping Pong, and he's doing a lot of other awesome stuff with like Dome Fest. He works with 1111 Group. Dave, glad to have you on.
I appreciate you having me on, man. Excited to talk about all things bird bands and kitchen dwellers and whatever else we're going to cover here.
Hell yeah. So yeah, man, to get started, I definitely want to hear more about your backstory with like how, you got involved in this crazy jam scene. Do you want to maybe bring me back to like the genesis? Like how did you and Pigeons get started working together?
Well, prior to Pigeons, the jam, scene was something that I was or just music in general was something I was very into from a pretty young age, live music in particular, and, grew up at kind of going to concerts. And as I was, got old enough to sort of start going to shows on my own, I would volunteer for street teams and, work exchange programs at music festivals and things like that. And then in college, I lived with a group of people, and we would put together, house parties with live music every Friday night in the basement in Harrisonburg, Virginia, at James Madison University, which was about 2-3 hours from where the Pigeons guys went to college, University of Maryland. And basically, they started coming down and playing my basement. And playing these house parties that we would throw. And that was the beginning of our kind of friendship. We were just like, I was just buying kegs of Natty Light and throwing a party and just having fun. And at a certain point, Fish played Bader Field in Atlantic City in the summer of 2012. And I chartered a deep sea fishing boat and had an after party on the roof. It was like the sketchiest event I've ever thrown together. Again, it was kind of just for fun, and that I think we sold it out in like 2 minutes or something. And
Holy
it was
shit.
just kind of that at that point, I think I realized that we weren't just having fun. I mean, we were having fun, but there was something else going on. And about a year later, I had moved to Colorado. I started doing accounting for bands like Yonder Mountain String Band, and Pigeons were out on tour, their first tour in Colorado. And I was kind of like getting my foot in the door in the music industry in a real way. I think their former manager or their former drummer, Dan, was like, one day we want you to be our manager. And I was like, well, we could just do that right now. and that, the rest is history, I guess. But that was kind of how we first linked up. It was kind of like we were just friends at first. It was a lot of right place, right time, or right basement, right time. And
right boat, right time. That's fucking cool.
Right,
about that charter boat. So was that Pigeons playing that?
Yep, Pigeons played. It was like this really sketchy deep sea fishing boat that I found. That I think I charged people like $30 maybe, and it included beer all night. I had kegs on the boat. I didn't think about the fact that the boat would be rocking the whole time. And so it was just like, people were just spraying foam all over the place. And
nice.
The pigeons played on the roof in the dark in the middle of the ocean. I can remember Ben almost falling off the boat. And yeah, it was a wild night. And just kind of I think it was also for the Pigeons guys, to that point, we were, like I said, it was just partying. And I think that maybe that the fact that I organized that in a relatively successful fashion. I wouldn't give myself that much credit, but they did maybe see something in me at that point. And then, like I mentioned, about 6 months later, I got a job doing business management for some of the bigger bands in the scene at that time out in Colorado when I moved out here.
That's fucking awesome, man. It's great too. You're just like you were saying, you're street teaming too. At first, you just fucking love it, just getting involved, helping people out, and then boom. So that was like 10 years ago. That cruise or that deep sea charter.
That was 2012. So not quite. It was about. It'll be 8 years ago this June, and then I started actually managing Pigeons in I want to say the fall of 2013. And then, or maybe it was winter of 2013. And initially when I managed the band, I mean, Greg and Jeremy were teaching me how to be their manager. I knew had a completely different set of skills than they did, But yeah, street teaming and volunteering at festivals and, doing the stuff that a lot of our fans do now was kind of my initial, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life in whatever fashion I can work my way into it. And I was lucky enough to have the Pigeons guys kind of just come walk into my world and start, working with them.
Hell yeah. I like it. So then, man, take me through, did you just, are you the founder of 1111 Group?
No, I'm not. So 1111 Group was founded by Ben Baruch, who Ben has been working in the music industry for a long time. He's held a lot of different roles, and I don't want to skip over any, and I probably am. But prior to him starting the 1111 Group, he was the buyer at the Fox Theater in Boulder, Colorado, the talent buyer, and booked that room, and basically, started managing Big Gigantic from at the beginning of their career. And since that has happened, and Big Gigantic is obviously a huge act now. He manages a number of other acts, and we have other managers that work with us at 1111. I kind of moved over here. I've been friends with Ben for about as long as I've been in Colorado, but we started working together just over a year ago. I came over to 1111.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So then a year ago, you started working with 1111 Group, but you were managing Kitchen Dwellers, though, before that, right?
Yeah, so I Pigeons Playing Ping Pong and Kitchen Dwellers had been my clients, Pigeons since 2013-ish, and Kitchen Dwellers since I want to say 2015, 2016. And I was kind of doing everything on my own. I had a few people working for me that came over to 1111 Group with me. But I was, independent, and now 1111 Group, I'm in an office with, 3 other managers, and we have a support staff that handles all different sorts of roles, and we have a really cool, hungry team that's just ready to kind of take care of whatever an artist may need.
Fuck yeah. I definitely look forward to understanding all the ins and outs kind of from this call about what exactly 1111 Group's doing for artists. Recently you guys added Goose too.
We did.
And they're fucking on fire.
Yes, Goose is on fire, and it has been a very fun project for us to work on. They're great dudes. They've been, friends, and they've kind of been in our circle for a few years now, and it's awesome to start working with them, and it's awesome to see how enthusiastic the greater scene has become about the band. It's wild. It's really just crazy to be involved in right now.
It really fucking is. And you must have like a pretty unique perspective on like kind of how and maybe even why this band is like skyrocketing over the last year.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I think there's a lot that they've done right. And you know, I wish that I could say that it had everything to do with the 1111 group, but quite frankly, the band themselves has so much to do with I think their rise to the, you know, kind of just seemingly out of nowhere, but it really wasn't, and they were very well prepared for it. All of the guys in that band are very well aware of what's going on, and they were ready for it, you know. I think I don't want to speculate too much about, because quite frankly, I don't know why it happened so quickly for them. I've never seen anything like it. I don't think a lot of people who have worked in the music industry for way longer than I have, especially within this, you know, jam space, quote unquote, have really seen anything like it in a very long time, if ever. But, you know, I think it's the first band to really explode on social media, and like, you know, there's acts outside of the actual, you know, specifically the jam band world that I think have exploded in a similar fashion. I mean, like Krungbin is a good example. Wolfpack, you know, where social media and these different communities just kind of latched onto it. I think one thing that happened with Goose that I haven't seen happen is all of the different kind of, you know, the jam band world is a lot of, you know, separate communities within it, and most of those communities have latched on to Goose. You know, Fish and Pigeons and, you know, the Disco Biscuits and all of these fan bases are finding something that they like in Goose, which is rare. I haven't that happen before. I've also, you know, their method and strategy of delivering content while this, you know, while all this attention was being brought to them, I think has been very effective. I mean, most people that you talk to in the industry that are watching what's happening with the band, I think would point to their Peach Festival set last year, both at the festival and then the video that was released because of it or from it. That I think was like, in a lot of ways, the initial spark. Just in general, their festival season. I mean, you were at Dome Fest, and that's when I had been talking to them prior to Dome Fest about potential management. And then at Dome Fest, I was like, all right, we're making this happen. They just came out. They're playing great. You know, they were ready for a big summer, and they like delivered at every turn, you know, and that was really cool to watch. So, you know, a lot of it is just the music doing what the music does. And then beyond that, being prepared from like the content angle and the social media angle, and kind of having your ducks in a row, to reference another fucking bird. But I think that was, you know, it was like a lot of the right things lined up for them. And they were ready to like ride the wave, and they're still riding that wave, obviously. And I'm excited to see, you know, where it goes. The sky is the limit right now, and it's really, I'm very grateful to be a part of it.
Fuck yeah, man. Yeah, I love that like explanation. So this is like a really cool segue into like this next part of this conversation, which gets more into like what exactly it means to be a band manager. So like managers, they like oversee, to my understanding, all kind of like non-music operations. So basically, the musicians can focus on the art, on the music. But, like Goose we're talking about, I know Peter does like video and mixing, and then they've got the legend Kalinsky doing the booking. So like, my question for you is like, really, what is the role of a manager, and what are you like doing for, I guess what you're probably doing for Dwellers might be a little different than what you're doing for Goose, but like maybe you want to paint that picture for me about what that looks like as far as your involvement?
Absolutely. And Kalinsky is now, so you're aware, he's on the management team. Myself, okay. Ben, Baruch, and Matt are managing the band. And when they came over here, we brought them, when Matt and the band came over here, we brought them to Paradigm, which is, they actually have the same booking agents as Pigeons. So, I mean, to answer, to kind of dive in on what management means, you kind of nailed it. The goal is to allow the artists to focus on what they do best. With a young band and really with any band, it is important, in my opinion, that they're not completely hands off in like the operations, especially these types of acts that early on, like, they, even now, they're, like you said, Peter's still like editing videos that they, their live video, and mixing the audio. But for a young band, I think it's important to understand what's involved with management, because if you hire a manager who's doing a shitty job, you're not going to know that they're doing a shitty job. At 1111, I think everyone here is more involved and more hands-on with their acts than maybe some other managers. But we're, a manager kind of just if you think of a band as a small business, we're overseeing every element of that business. So, I work with our booking agents on a daily basis to, plan tours and approach tours with the right strategy, play the right rooms, price tickets appropriately, not play in the same market 3 times a year, space things out. Like, you don't want to play Boston and Portland next to each other, maybe, you spread those out. Just things like that when it comes to touring strategy. I mean, I oversee the marketing after the tour gets booked. I'm working with the venues that we're playing on a daily basis, and making sure that we're marketing the shows and pushing tickets, and then I'm working on content. So those videos that we're talking about with that Peter edits and mixes, and we do Nugs releases and things like that. Managing those releases of content and the creation of that content. There's the merchandise. There's record releases that I oversee, and and within all of these elements of what a band does, there's people involved, a number of different people involved, that it's my job to keep all of those people on the same page and operating as effectively and efficiently, and giving them the tools that they need to do what they do best. So, we book a show at the Capitol Theater, and I make sure that their marketing team has a lot of content to be pushing, and so they can run ads, and and we can put our best foot forward in selling tickets. And when we put a record out, I'm working with our record distributor and our publicist and our radio promoter, and the internal marketing team at 1111 to make sure we're getting that album in everyone's hands. There's so many elements of what goes on. and it's a manager's job to kind of make sure that all of those elements are, whether it's a record release, album, an album release or a tour or a merch plan, that everything's kind of headed in the same direction. Because it's, no area of it's not autonomous. It's a small business. So you want each element to have an overall strategy. You always need to be looking at the bigger picture and, kind of thinking 3 steps ahead, and ensuring that everything's in place to achieve those goals of the artist, and that's how you sustain success, hopefully.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, man. So you're talking about, like, for instance, the show at the Capitol Theater, right? Making sure they have all the assets and everything and doing marketing. You have radio shows, you do social media ads. Man, so, like, what I want to kind of give some attention to is how, over the years, a while back, I'm sure you remember, like, Napster and LimeWire.
Yep.
You've got streaming and, album physical CD sales have, like, basically plummeted. And now, like, social media is such a huge thing. So, like, my question, like, we're talking about, for instance, like a Capitol Theater show, or, maybe even a Kitchen Dweller show in Montana, or, Pigeons Playing Ping Pong at the Bluestone. Like,
right.
Basically, when you approach a show, like, in this crazy, ever-changing, construct of how to promote, what have you been recently finding, and how have you recently been adapting in, the way algorithms change and how to allocate Facebook money, et cetera?
Well, yeah, I mean, the general algorithms and things like that on social media are obviously, that's something that you really need to kind of stay on top of, because it does change so frequently. But, the approach to marketing a show is relatively consistent with any act. I mean, it depends on what, you're working with in terms of a budget, but we have a really good team here at 1111 that handles all of our ad buys for the most part, for across the board on all of our acts. So, there's a lot of it we have roughly 20 acts on our roster, and when you're running ads that often, you get a good feel for what works. We do a lot of, like, there's a lot of trial and error when it comes to, but it's controlled trial and error. So we're not going to blow $500 on an ad that only 3 people see. We're going to take $5 and see what works, and we're going to see if an ad utilizing this 30-second live clip delivers better than a 5-minute full performance of a song. We're going to see which audiences respond to certain types of content better. The classic jam band fans might want an ad that, a full performance of a song might catch their eye. Whereas if I'm, let's say, trying to get Vampire Weekend fans to buy Goose tickets or to buy Pigeons tickets, I'm going to target them a little bit differently than I would a Fish fan. So those are kind of things that we do, and on a, and on a per show level, we target a lot of different people and try to grow our audience and our ticket buyers. And typically the venue themselves has we always trust their process. We always trust their process in marketing to their, audience. The Capitol Theater is one of the best in the country, and, they know exactly how to reach the people who come out to their shows. But yeah, I don't think we're doing anything wildly creative in the marketing in that, I guess, regard to marketing a show. I think we're just, making.
So let me kind of rephrase my question. So we're answering it like, and I asked it referencing the Capitol Theater show, but now let me ask it just in terms of being an artist. So, like, you've got the live show model, you have your content, and I did reference like album sales kind of, bottoming out in terms of like streaming and what that's done to CDs. Like, so in this changing environment as a band manager, like, how can you, like, what are you doing to basically hedge against the shifting complexity? Is it I've heard people say it's like all in the live show. Like, you really have to double down on that, because that's where like a lot of the connection and the ability to make money happens. But yeah, it's kind of confusing, man. Like, honestly, because as a musician, how are you supposed to make money on your music?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, the royalties that Spotify pays are, not nearly what you're just not going to make that much money off Spotify streams, especially these types of acts. They're not pop acts that have millions and millions of listens on those platforms. I mean, there's platforms like Nugs are a great tool for like ancillary income. I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is like, other than ticket sales, how do you make money if you're not, playing 150 shows a year?
Right.
And that Nugs is one of the great ways to do that. They having people listening on Nugs, in terms of what the artist walks away with, they're getting paid significantly more on a Nugs stream than they are on a Spotify stream. So it's a more significant source of revenue. Also, I mean, the merch game is huge, and you see that with all of the bands that I work with. We put a lot of merch out, both online and on the road, and we're that's something I'm actively working on with all of my bands, is developing the online revenue, because we need those streams to, like you're saying, to kind of hedge your bet, so you don't need to be on the road all the time. And yet the ancillary kind of revenue streams in the jam space aren't as significant as they might be with a pop band. It's pretty difficult to get your song licensed for a Apple commercial, which that's a huge revenue source if you can land that kind of thing. But I think in the jam space, tickets, obviously touring, but the merch is such a huge part of that. And fortunately, there's these platforms like Nugs that allow a different sort of royalty structure than Spotify, where you kind of get lost in the shuffle of some pretty huge artists. Yeah, and it's crazy. Like, this conversation, you're managing like definitely two of the bigger bands like in this scene, and even, I mean, bands at the level, like you say, only pop bands can really make anything off like royalties and then getting licensed for a commercial. But like, let's say you're a band that's definitely not at the level of maybe having your shows featured on Nugs yet. You're kind of up and coming, you're a killer band, but you don't have a fan base that you can sell a lot of merch to, and definitely you don't have a lot of active markets that you can go sell a lot of tickets in. For that band specifically, I'm sure musicians have asked you this a bunch of times, like, what advice do you have for on the rise bands? I mean, keep grinding, that and keep like fostering the community, because the community that sort of latches on, even if it is a small community, that's a lot of people are looking for that just as much as they are looking for some great music, and those are, I think you see that with all three of the acts that I work with. They have very strong communities that follow them, and every jam band ever that's had success has had those kind of sustaining communities that follow them all around the country, and that it's important to kind of develop that relationship between the band and the fans, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, honestly, in my opinion. But how does a band go about even doing that?
I mean, I wish that there were like a simple equation, and it's a difficult question to answer. I think playing as much as you can early on, when you have the ability to do it, and it's hard to say that. I mean, early on you're not making any money, so it's like you need to have jobs on the side sometimes to support yourselves, but you still also want to be playing all the time. So it's like what is that? I don't know
sword.
the term, but it's like a conundrum. Yeah, double-edged sword. So it's a difficult. It's which direction do we go here, or which direction do I go here as a musician? So that's a tough place to be in, and you just gotta play in front of as many people as you can, and like Greg from Pigeons, when he gets asked this question, I think he often says, early on in our career, we would go play shows for 3 people, but we played that show like it was the sold out Madison Square Garden, because those 3 people will tell 5 friends, and then the next time you come, there's 20, there's 15 people there, and then you play it like it's the Garden again, and then there's 45 the next time you come, and you interact with those people, and that's interacting at that level is how you build a community early on. The connection from the fans to the band is I think what early on fosters the growth of like a community sort of following. And that would be my advice to young bands, is just play as much as you can and play your heart out.
Hell yeah. Would you say that even applies to, like, let's say you're a band without you're talking about them having like jobs, right? So let's say they can't travel too much on tour. Would you say to even play like weekly while they're building a following in just like their home market, or would that be too much?
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, it's, I would play weekly in not only your home market, but like, early on, and I don't even really remember what Pigeons were doing because I wasn't that closely involved with them at the time, but like they're a good example of, they were, every weekend when they were in college, driving down to my college at JMU, and then they were going to play Richmond, and then maybe they were going to play Salisbury, Maryland, and then they'd play, at their home at University of Maryland as well. And then, maybe the next weekend they'd go to Blacksburg to Virginia Tech, and, North Carolina to Wilmington, and, up to New York or Philly or, whatever. They would just play as much as they could, and, make those relationships and build that fan base. So, yeah, whether you're playing, I mean, the other thing about playing all the time is you get the other advantage of it, other than building, your fan base, is you get more, the band gets more comfortable in front of a crowd. So when playing every week at home is going to put you in a better position to go play, in Columbus, if, or wherever home, wherever away from home is, you want to, be able to step into that space confidently, and onto that stage confidently. So.
Right on. Man, this has been fucking awesome. Definitely winding down here to the last part of this podcast.
Right on,
thanks again, man, for coming on and spitting all this knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's what you want to call it. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm happy to, talk about my experience thus far in working with all of these bands and in the music industry.
Yeah, man. So with your experience, what do you attribute your greatest successes to? Because you've definitely had some success doing this.
I think I'm fortunate enough to work with some really talented people who play great music. That's the most difficult part is they're doing the hard work and I'm just facilitating it. So I think I'm fortunate enough to work with 3 really great bands directly, and 1111 group has 20 really great bands that all just play great music, and that's the most important part of the equation. Without that, there's
for sure
there's nothing to do. So yeah, I'm just connecting the dots for some really great musicians, and I guess my ability to do that and to see the bigger picture, especially at and learning from mistakes. I didn't know how to do this. There's no handbook on managing a band, at least not one that's actually applicable, in my opinion. So I think learning on the run or learning on the go, it was an important skill, and also knowing when to swallow your pride and learn a lesson, and taking everything as a learning opportunity. I think those are all things that have led me or brought me into the position that I'm in, and being able to work with these acts that I love.
Hell yeah, man. And yeah, you're saying it's about the great music, and there's a community surrounding it, and you're connecting the dots. You're seeing the bigger picture 3 steps ahead. My next question for you, man, you're obviously an avid music fan as well as a business person. How do you find yourself connecting with music? More specifically, my question, where do you draw the line between just good music and great music?
I don't draw a line between good music and great music.
For you,
I don't.
In music that you enjoy.
I love the music that I work with. I'm like you said, an avid music fan. I enjoy all sorts of music. I go see all sorts of music. I love the stuff that I work with, but I also love, going to see a hip hop show or, a jazz show, all across the board. So, working in music, I have a different relationship with music than I did, prior to being this involved with it, but I still love to, there's nothing I love more than going to see Fish. And I hope that'll never change. If it does, I'm going to go work at a restaurant and stop working in the music industry. Because, I would never want to hate what, or not find enjoyment in what kind of brought me here. So, but I don't really know what you mean by what's the difference between good and great.
It's all subjective.
I don't think I have.
For sure.
I don't think I have a line. I hear something and I think it's great. I think music in general is great.
Hell yeah. Yeah, you kind of alluded to the fact that you work in it. You're probably so, always swimming in music. You do working in the industry have a different relationship to music than, a normal, person does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to for me at least, I try to step outside of that, consciously and go just enjoy a show once in a while. And not get caught up in like, you know, any concert, if you're working in the music industry, is really a networking opportunity. But, you know, I try to remove myself from that consciously and just go enjoy, you know, and not get caught up in what is a job more often than not for me. So, you know, I do make an effort to just like, even with the bands that I work with, you know, I'll sometimes just like, I'm just going to go, you'll maybe see me at a Pigeon show or a Goose show, like I'm going to go stand in the middle of the crowd and just enjoy it for a minute because I think it's important to, you know, continue to have that kind of appreciation for whether it's someone I'm managing or otherwise.
Hell yeah, man. Well, all right, Dave. I'm out of questions. Thanks again, man.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun chatting.
Hell yeah, man. We'll definitely, you know, see you around Ohio. You've got a home here whenever you're passing by. To sign off this podcast, I want to ask one more question, dog.
Yep.
And yeah, Pigeons and Goose are coming over here. What is it, like March 11th in Covington?
I should know that.
And then the 5th in Cleveland.
Yes, it's next Thursday, I believe, in Cleveland at the Agora Ballroom.
The next night's in Grand Rapids, I think.
Yep, it's the 5th in Cleveland, maybe 5th or 6th. It's the 5th in Cleveland, which is next Thursday, and then they kind of kick off the Midwest and Southeast run, the Bird Tour, and Kitchen Dwellers are in Cleveland at the beginning of April. I should be rattling this shit off, but I'm not. It's been a long day already. But yeah, and then you know, Goose and Pigeons are also in Covington, like you said, on the 11th. But what's the wrap up question? What do you got?
Yeah, wrap up question. So you've obviously got your finger on the pulse of the jam scene. Give me 3 rising bands that you think could have just like a monster year this year.
I mean, I hope tons of bands have a monster year this year. I've got to mention the Magic Beans. They're good friends of mine. I was hanging with Scott and Casey last night. We do a lot of stuff with them, with Pigeons, and I think a lot of people would say, well, they already are kind of on the rise, but that's a, you know, one that I hope continues to have the growth that they've seen recently. I mean, I can name more than 3. I love Aggie.
Name them all, man.
Le Special.
I love Le Special.
Yeah, so do I. Who else?
Fucking Disco.
There's a band called Disco. Disco's great. There's this band called Yam Yam that we're gonna have. On Dome Fest that Jeremy and I have really been nerding out about. Jeremy absolutely loves those guys. I think we're all very excited to have them at Dome Fest. I mean, I feel bad not mentioning there's so many great young bands. I mean, I love what's happening with this like kind of new young scene of bands. You know, Aqueous, who's already, you know, been doing great, but I think they have a huge year ahead of them, I hope.
Hell yeah. I love Aqueous.
And yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in this community and scene.
Absolutely. And if you're out there listening, you made it this far, definitely come to Dome Fest and check all those bands out, May 14th to 16th. Hell yeah, man. I can't wait for that. I'll be at the Bird Tour too. Thanks again, Dave.
Thank you, man. I will I'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother. Well, everyone out there, this has been the Weird Music Podcast. Here you go. Guidebook on how to crush it as a band. Straight from Dave DiCianni. Cheers, y'all.